Let's discuss this live now with Associate Professor at Denison University and the President of the Global Institute for Sustainable Prosperity, Fadhel Kaboub. Welcome.
Thank you for having me on the show.
How do you assess the ongoing investigations? Have there been any statements from the prosecutors?
Well, I think the investigation will take its time and will reveal its outcome. But really, what's important from this McKinseyGate situation is two things. One is a reflection of the failure of the French public administration tradition. France, since 1945, established l'ENA, which is the École Nationale d'Administration, which is the most important public administration intellectual institution that was eventually closed and eliminated by Macron in 2021. And that reflects a failure of a long tradition, not only in France, but in all former French colonies, including Tunisia, Burkina Faso, and beyond. This tradition of having a public administration that is structured in the French tradition was essentially squeezed to death and replaced by hundreds of millions of dollars worth of contracts with consulting firms, including McKinsey. So that has to be recognized, that there is a fundamental failure in the way the French government and former French colonies are governed from an administrative standpoint. And number two, it reflects the failure of the Eurozone system that squeezed public finances to the point of not allowing the French government to actually hire and train and administer its own strategies and policies, but rather pass on these contracts to private firms, international firms, in this case an American firm, to conduct public policy on behalf of the French government. And this is, by the way, the model that France is also exporting to the rest of the world via its presence in Africa in particular. We know how much pressure French embassies and French ambassadors put on developing countries to sign contracts with French construction companies and major multinational corporations. So this is a failure of a system rather than just a simple corruption case. Of course, the corruption itself tells us something about the back and forth, kind of the revolving door between volunteers on the Macron campaign from McKinsey in particular, and then ultimately major contracts handed out to McKinsey. So that's really the beyond the McKinseyGate itself. We have to look at the broader implications for France as a government, for the Eurozone as a system of austerity, and for its links to former colonies on the African continent in particular, and how those procedures actually produce the corruption that Macron was talking about today that must be eliminated. It's actually a system that produces corruption by design.
Well, you talked about the corruption, you've talked about the internal issues, but France does have strict rules on the financing of political parties and election campaigns. How exactly did this occur? I mean, specifically.
Well, technically speaking, McKinsey didn't participate as an institution in the elections, but McKinsey provided a lot of volunteers as individuals participating in Macron's election cycle. But a few months later, all of a sudden, government contracts are handed out to McKinsey, the institution. So it raises a lot of red flags, and especially when the volume of these contracts doubles in a matter of a few months right after that election. So that's really the major red flags that alerted the investigators to look into this. And I suspect if France and other governments in the Eurozone and beyond take this matter very seriously, they will start digging probably multiple scandals similar to the McKinseyGate. And it's not just McKinsey, there's lots of consulting firms on a large scale that engage in this type of interaction with what should be a sacred democratic process.
Associate Professor at Denison University and the President of the Global Institute for Sustainable Prosperity, Fadhel Kaboub. Thank you very much.
Thank you.